we're going to focus on the truth of Christian faith. I always start off going over the Bible being historically reliable, and then go into miracles and prophecy, and then give a historical argument for the resurrection. To argue that since God uses miracles and prophecy to verify the message of a prophet, and if we can show that the Bible has been verified by miracles and prophecy, then it grounds the Bible being from God, and whatever the Bible teaches is true. So you knew how to go on from there. So what is archaeology? This is me digging in Israel, and all my students always say, why did you have on short shorts? And I have to explain, these are not short shorts. I don't wear short shorts. They were riding up. Because they were umbros, and umbros will ride up on you. I'm squatting. Anyway, yeah, feel free to laugh. Or don't. If I'm not funny, don't laugh. It would laugh if it's not funny. You don't have to give me a courtesy laugh. You know, sometimes somebody tells a joke, and you feel like you have to give them a courtesy laugh. Like, heh. Anyway, so archaeology is the study of human culture and history through the material that remains. All right. Manuscript evidence. Do we have an accurate copy of the Bible? If somebody said we can't trust the Bible because all we have is a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy, you would say, yeah, it's not correct. And they'll say, well, what about the telephone game? If I whisper something to you, and then you whisper it, then you whisper, by the end it's different. Why is it that copying the Bible is not like the telephone game?
Your hand copied it. Well, your hand copied it.
Very good, because it's not oral. The rules of the telephone game are such that if I say it orally and I can't hear it again, it changes. But if I wrote it down and go, now let's see if it's going to be different by the end. No, it's going to be the same. And so it's a category mistake to try to when they do that. Okay, so it's not like the telephone game. It's written transmission, not oral. So when they make these arguments, you may want to say that's a category mistake because you're comparing a telephone game, which is oral, which is not the same when you write it. That's the whole point of having something written. So you can keep looking at it, so you know what I mean? In case you forget what it said. That's why God gave us the written word of God, to preserve the doctrines he wants us to know. So we have a lot of ancient copies. The number of copies is over 66,000 ancient copies when you include the Old and New Testament. Usually you only hear the numbers for the New Testament. We include Old and New. We actually have more ancient copies of the Old than the New.
Hey, on that one, what constitutes ancient copy?
An ancient copy is a good question. Is any handwritten copy prior to, it's an ancient document, but not found in ancient times, prior to the printing press. So 1400s, this is the printing press. Any copy that we find prior to that, if it's of a medieval text, it's called, we'll say we have this many medieval texts. If it's of course that would be the medieval time period. But even if it's an ancient copy, let's say, of the ancient document, we have this many copies prior to 1400. After you get to the printing press, we don't count it anymore because printing press is something, you have so many.
So that's a standard term.
That's standard term.
About Bible or anything.
When you're talking about Bible, when you're talking about any of the others.
Okay.
And so you guys have all seen this, so I can fast forward through it. Maybe show you. Have you guys seen this, John Rylands? Okay. We do want to see. I was going to go faster because I thought we already did. Go slow as I speed through. John Rylands fragment.
We did that.
Okay. This is the earliest copy. Mummy masks is one. Did they talk about that? Did they go find? Oh, lots of ancient fragments have been found. These mummy masks. Like if I die, so let's say I'm living in 300 AD. If I die, you go out. My kids will go out to the dump and they'll go find some discarded papyrus. They'll take it home and they will kind of paper mache it, put it on my face, paint over it, and paint like a little mask like that right there. And then archaeologists come along, 1,700 years later, in the year 2000 plus, and then they dig it up and they go, hey, look at the mummy mask. What's this written on? And they realize, oh, there's some of Plato's writings, and here's some ancient love letter or something that some guy was writing somebody, and then here's a fragment of Mark. Gospel. What happened is that was so common. Just go to the dump, just take the papyrus, and then make these mummy masks. And you're burying people, and we found a lot of biblical texts like that because the Bible was getting old. People were decaying. The copies were decaying. They just throw the thing away. And today we're like, why would you do that? Keep it, because one day people are going to think we're making this stuff up. We need to keep as many ancient copies as we can. Yeah.
Was the mummification process, was that helping to preserve it?
I don't know if that process itself was in any way applied to the mask. I'm not sure.
I mean,
being in the cold, being in the tombs and everything like that is going to definitely slow down any kind of decay.
But I mean, the actual making of the mask, was that possible?
I don't know if they put any preservatives on the mask. They may have. I don't want to say something that's false. I don't know if they may have, but they've been preserved very well. That's what I can say. If that's the reason, I'm not sure. But we do have a fragment of Mark's Gospel dates to 150 A.D. Last year when I was here, I told you it dated around 80 A.D. But archaeologists jumped the gun on that, being too excited, and they found that it looks like it's like a few decades later. Does anybody remember me talking about that last year? Sorry, scratch that. The gentleman here, Scott Carroll, dated it to 80 A.D. and now he's revised the date. Looks like it's a little bit later. It's still pretty early, 150 A.D. But then we have the Bodmer papyri. I'm going to go through these quicker. You want me to, right? The Bodmer papyri. These are lots of ancient copies. It's just an example of a fragment from Matthew. Sometimes we have several pages together, like this will be found. The codex, the idea of not having a scroll, but sewing them all together, all the different leaves together, that came out around 100 AD. So shortly, like once you get into the 100s, 200s, 300s, you don't find scrolls anymore. You start finding the codex. The codex form like this. There's some Paul's letters on display in Ireland. Then we have Codex Vaticanus is near complete, dates around 350 AD. Then the Codex Sinaiticus around the same time period. It's Genesis all the way to Revelation. Both of these are. Okay, and it's bound together. This is Septuagint. Is the Greek version. It's the Greek version of the Old Testament there. Okay, so you guys have seen these charts before, right? I figure what's going to be boring to you. So I'll speed through here. It's kind of showing the different copies, 66,000. Once you add an Old and New Testament, it's kind of saying how many copies we have compared to everybody else.
Style graph.
Yeah, it's a common way that apologists teach this stuff. Yes.
So if you have a little tiny scrap of Mark, how do you?
That's considered a whole fragment.
Okay.
I'm sorry, a whole document, a whole text. They'll call that a whole manuscript.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe that term will apply to my question too. That little fragment that you had up there 3 slides ago or whatever.
Yeah.
How do we use that, or how do we use all the fragments together to say that our whole New Testament is accurate until we get to 350 when we have a whole copy of it?
Well, we have a lot of we have so many early ones, and what we also have that I haven't mentioned is we also have quotes of the New Testament. We have early church fathers quoting the New Testament. By the time you get to around 300 A.D., we have I forget how many it is. It's like over 30,000 quotes from the New Testament, just the first few hundred years. And so because we have so many quotes early on, and because we have so many fragments and so many sometimes full texts, when you compare, it keeps on saying the same thing. And so in order for somebody to change it and invent it, they would have to go around all over the world. Like, okay, change this over here. Make sure we change this quote from Irenaeus over here. And so for that to be true, that becomes so irrational and goofy that nobody takes that position.
So we have enough to pretty much recreate.
Big time.
Even
Absolutely.
without that complete text, we have enough to recreate.
We have so many ancient ones. 60, some of them are. We have a lot
prior to 350.
We have a lot prior to 50s, 350 as well.
Okay.
We have more quotes from church fathers.
Yeah.
Early on, yes.
This is a question I haven't ever heard anybody talk about it before. The early church fathers, their words. How many copies of those do we have?
I do not know. I've looked that up, and I couldn't find that answer. For the exact same question. How many copies of Irenaeus do we have? How many copies of Eusebius or Tertullian or anybody? Don't know.
So those guys are some pretty cool guys when you hear their stories,
Yes.
some of their stories and stuff. And nobody knows them anymore.
No. That's why, if you have Geisler's Systematic Theologies, it's 4 volumes. Anybody have that?
Yeah.
Well, one thing he does is in every section where he discusses a doctrine, he will then quote the church fathers to show what they taught about those doctrines too. It's a lot. It's a lot of quotes and information that he's got gathered in there. He had a lot of his graduate students researching this sort of things for him. So there's the United States. This is where we live. We're going to fly over here. There we go. There's the Mediterranean Sea. And right there is what country? Israel. There's Israel. So we're going to zoom in. There's Israel. We're going to zoom in again. Israel's a tiny place. It's a very small country. A lot of Americans don't realize how small this place is. Modern Israel is only about 200 miles north to south and only about 50 miles wide. And that's what everybody's fighting over and freaking out over. Like, this is our land. It's a very tiny piece of land. Now, ancient Israel was a little bit bigger. They also had land on the other side of the Jordan, and it was supposed to go up towards the Euphrates. If you put modern Israel in North Carolina, it fits 4.8 times in North Carolina. You can almost fit 5 Israels inside North Carolina. That's how small this place is.
So like Winston-Salem, Greensboro, and Charlotte, that area.
Yeah. When you go, if you go visit Israel, and has anybody been in Israel? Yeah, it's easy to get around there and see pretty much everything you want to see because it's small. You know, and most people don't go down this far either. A lot of that's just desert area down there. So a lot of it is, I would definitely recommend going there. It's much safer than what you probably think. People are like, I don't want to go there because I'm going to get blown up. It's a lot safer than what you may realize. So the date and place of Jesus' birth. Now, how did they keep track of time? Long time ago. Like today, we would say Jesus died around 30 or 31 AD. Okay, some people say 33 AD. I go with 31 AD. I have a long list of reasons why I go with that date, but it doesn't matter right now. Take a long time to explain it all. But anyway, Jesus wasn't saying, okay, it's 30 AD. And King David wasn't saying, hey, I'm living in 1000 BC. 1,000 years until Jesus. So how do they keep track of time? Very good. By the reigns of kings. Like in the whole world did this. The 4th year of Solomon's reign, the Rehoboam reigned 17 years, etc. The 5th year of King Rehoboam's reign, such and such happened. Now the whole world did that. And so in Egypt, they would say in the 3rd year of Pharaoh Sheshonq, this event happened. You know, in the 8th year of Amenhotep, the 3rd, this event happened. So you had to memorize the names of the kings and in what year of his reign an event happened.
Please.
Hurts my screen and distract me and distract you guys. And if you were trying to figure out, okay, this is in the 3rd year of the reign of Hezekiah. How do we judge? How do we compare that against what's going on in Babylon? The 3rd year of Hezekiah's reign was what year of Babylonian king? And it becomes just a nightmare of trying to stick it all together. Of course, there's always eggheads around here like, oh, I'm going to figure it out for you. And they get it all hammered out for you. This king, we're just going to compare all these charts, all these kings. There's always somebody to do that. But this guy here made it a little easier for us. He's actually lived in what is now Romania, which is where my wife is from, so she always wants me to tell everybody that. Make sure you tell him that he is in Romania now. Dionysius here, around 525 for us, he decided, how about we base everything on the life of Jesus? The King of Kings. Could we base everything on the reigns of kings? How about the reign of our ultimate king? And so the calendar that we now have, he came up with it. Okay, around 520, what is now 525 AD. And said, we'll just say everything before and after. Now, he thought Jesus was born in what is 1 AD on our calendar. It looks like Jesus was probably born around 4 BC. Well, we're off a few years, so you know.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, he did pretty good. We're not mad at Chinese. Yeah. Anyway. And so now, but rather than shift everything around, we're just like, whatever, we'll just go with it. And so he wasn't inspired, obviously. And so the Old Testament period was written between about 1400 BC and 400 BC. But it covers the events earlier. And then there's no scripture written. And then we have the New Testament period. If you look at the New Testament period, it's not to scale comparison. The New Testament period is very short. The New Testament period was only about 100 years of time. Okay, there is no year zero, by the way, but I will often use zero like this. There is no year zero. It goes from 1 BC to 1 AD, but I put 0 up there just to show when that transition is. Does that make sense? I always like to say that so I don't confuse people. But no, I saw this archaeology guy one time. He put a 0. There is a year 0. There's not a year 0. I just do that to make it easier. Okay, so Old Testament period ended 400 BC. What we're going to get to the context of Jesus' life now. What empire was ruling the world, or Israel, I should say, and their part of the world when the Old Testament ended? When the Old Testament was ending, around 400 BC, who was ruling the world? What great empire? It was the Persians. Very good. The Persian Empire is all the greens. Everybody can see this okay? Yeah. That's the Persian Empire. There's Israel right there. Is the yellow. Okay. We all remember our geography, right? We're Americans, so we may not, right? We're kind of like, it only matters over there.
That looks like Florida.
That's why. That looks like Florida. That's Florida. And this is it. Egypt. We got our bearings, right? Turkey, Mediterranean. And now we're going to move our little timeline along. When the Old Testament was over, the Persians were in control. New Testament starts. Who's in control? Rome. Suddenly, bam, we just jumped to Rome. So if you read the Old Testament, then you get to the New, you missed a lot of things because in between here comes our little timeline. We're going to move it along. There we go. Who is going to then take over? Oh, my family came. I didn't think you were coming.
Hi.
This is my wife that I mentioned earlier. She's from Romania, and then my kids are part Romanian and American. All born here. In fact, Caleb was an American citizen before Gabriella was. He was. She and I were married 6 years before we had kids, but it took forever for her whole citizenship to get. Not that this has anything to do with it. We're talking about it took a while for it to go through, and so anyway, that was totally irrelevant. But we say
that's like traversing an infinite.
It was like we did it. We traversed an infinite, so there's no God. Okay, so this is we're talking about the intertestamental period between the Old and New Testament. So the Greeks are going to take over. Who was the emperor that spread the Greek Empire or the Macedonian Empire, which we just call the Greek Empire usually? Alexander, very good. Did you say Alejandro? Yeah. Alejandro the Great, very good. And he's going to spread what language? Greek, which is why the New Testament will be written in Greek. Very good, instead of Hebrew and Aramaic like the Old. So and there's Israel right there. Okay. And then the Greek Empire fragments into 4 large territories, and eventually the Roman Empire comes to power. And an easy way to remember where the Roman Empire was is it's the empire that it ruled all the land that touches what? Mediterranean. Easy way to remember it. The Roman Empire ruled all the land that borders the Mediterranean. You can tell I teach high school. Give you all these little hints and things, and maybe you're like, we're grown ups. You don't have to do that for us. So around 60. No, we do need it. Okay. West and east spells we. W that way, E this way. If I start doing that, then you might be like, okay, stop. So Rome conquers Israel around 63 BC. Okay? And then the Romans are going to appoint Herod the Great to become king of this territory. of the whole Palestine area. Now, Herod the Great is not Jewish. He supposedly converts to Judaism, but what was his ethnic background? Caleb, do you remember? No. Herod. Brandon, do you remember? My kids know. Very good. Mommy didn't tell you the answer, did she? No. Yeah, Esau. He's related to Esau. So here we have Esau taken over Jacob. He was an Edomite from Idumea is what it was called in the New Testament period. He was not related to. He's not a descendant of Jacob. He was a descendant of Esau. Anyway, so he's appointed. That's one reason they didn't want him to be king. He's not rightful heir of David, etc. So he becomes king, and then now we're going to move our timeline along here. And here's the New Testament period. Right, there's New Testament period. So Jesus is going to be born around 4 BC. Where's he born? Bethlehem. Very good, Bethlehem. And then he's going to minister Galilee, Judea, and the other side of the Jordan River a little bit. There's Jerusalem. And then the apostles are going to preach. Which book of the New Testament covers that? The apostles preaching? The book of Acts. Very good. And then Nero is going to start persecuting the church. Acts does not record that because Acts was written before 64 AD. Nero would then start killing off Christians in Rome, including Peter and Paul, who crucifies Peter and beheads Paul. Why didn't he crucify Paul? Fun trivia question.
He was a Roman?
He's a Roman citizen. It's illegal to crucify a Roman citizen. That's why he was beheaded instead. Okay? So then Rome will destroy the temple in Israel. And providentially, what was God communicating to the Jews?
The old is gone.
Old covenant's done. You can't atone for sins anymore. Okay? Yeah. And so then Jerusalem will be burned down. And when did the Jews rebuild the temple?
They didn't.
They never have. Good job. You can't fool you guys. Your question. They've never rebuilt it. There's no temple since 70 AD. What's built on top of that site now? The Dome of the Rock. And an Islamic shrine. Does God want that there? Yes. Why? Because it's there. Because they can't rebuild the temple. So God's communicating what? Old covenant over, new system of atonement is in place. Okay. Anyway, so Gospels, life of Jesus, in the book of Acts, epistles, Revelation. Let's cover some background stuff. So now we're going to start looking at some discoveries. You ready? That's all introduction. Too long, right?
That was good stuff. That was good.
Good.
That was good.
Okay, now this will screw up Christmas for you. You ready for me to ruin Christmas for you? Jesus, more than likely, was not born in December.
What?
And we know the holiday he probably was born on. This is really cool, though. When I was in Israel, Ray Vanderland explained all this to us, and I wrote down as many notes as I could, and I had to go back and study and research to understand even better afterwards. Okay? You have a question or something? Oh, the answer. I didn't ask the question yet. Read my mind. Okay, this is really cool. Watch this. The Hebrew calendar actually starts in March, which is when the Passover was. Actually, Jews are not supposed to have Rosh Hashanah, which is in September. Biblically, they're not supposed to be doing that. If you read Exodus 12, verse 1 and 2, God says, for you, the new year is the month of Nisan, which is March, April. They're on the lunar calendar, so it shifts all over the place for us. But then Rosh Hashanah is not a biblical holiday. You know that? And so a lot of Jews are like, we're not going to celebrate Rosh Hashanah. We're only going to celebrate New Year on the 1st of Nisan. Well, anyways, that's when it's supposed to start. Okay? Now this is cool. You got to follow me on this because it's going to get deep, and you might try not to daydream. Because by the end, you'll be like, wait, what did it say? Because I think it's cool. I wish I'd listened. This is neat.
You mind if I take pictures of it?
I'll go for it. Okay, I'll try to stay out of the way. The descendants of Aaron. You have Moses, his brother Aaron, priest. The descendants of Aaron, the 24 grandsons, were appointed to temple duties at certain weeks throughout the year. Okay, and here's how it worked. Okay, so I used to think you always had temple like priests always like working there, but they actually cycled around. The Levites actually had other jobs they were going to do, and only 1 week out of the year was your family's week. But then everybody had to come during the high holidays to act as priests. So didn't you kind of picture them like that's their full-time job? They're always a priest. Like we're gonna, that's like not how it was. And you start reading the Bible, like, oh, it's all actually spelled out in there. I just didn't notice that. But here's how it works: the 24 grandsons of Aaron, their descendants are the ones who they're given certain weeks throughout the year. The 8th week is for Abijah. Anybody who's from the family of Abijah. Okay, now the 8th week meaning. It's not counting like Passover. Like they don't even count this as weeks. Like they'll say like everybody has to go then, and then like after that they start counting 1, 2, and then we're not going to count the. They don't count Pentecost because everybody has to go then. And then they start counting again like 3, 4. Okay, those aren't the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. But I'm just trying to explain that they don't assign a number to those high holy days. Okay, so here's how it works. Abijah's division ministered in June. Okay, because after you get to the holy days. Pentecost, Passover, and such. Abijah's time is going to be would be June for us. Okay, about that time period. Okay, and the Gospel of Luke tells us in the days of Herod. This is when before Jesus was born. This is about John the Baptist being born. It says in the days of Herod there was a priest named Zechariah who was of the division of what? Abijah. Probably never would even notice that. This comes out as just, a bunch of Hebrew things. Yeah, where's Jesus? But Zechariah of the division of Abijah. It's in there for a reason. Because God, it looks like, wanted us to pinpoint when Jesus is going to be born. The month. Okay, this is cool. It says, then an angel comes and says, your wife Elizabeth is going to bear you son John. Then he goes mute and all that stuff because he's like, how? Anyway, so John is going to be conceived sometime in June. Because he then will leave and go back to his hometown. And so she hadn't conceived yet, so she's going to conceive in that month. Are you with me? Okay. Well, if you read Luke, it says, continue Luke, then an angel came to Mary and said, you're going to conceive and bear a son, Jesus. And then the angel says, your relative Elizabeth has already conceived a son and is in her 6th month. All this has been in there all along. Isn't that interesting? Which means Jesus will be conceived when? He's conceived in December. So we'll just celebrate that this month. Yeah, he's conceived. Right, in this month. He's conceived in December. Okay? Gentiles, why couldn't you figure this out? So he's conceived in December. Now, 9 months later, we're going to move 9 months or 40 weeks, as we know that it is for pregnancy. So once you get to 9 months later, that puts Jesus being born when? August. In September. January. 40 weeks after. It's going to take us to what will be September for us. In the month of Tishri, for the Jews, does anybody know the big holiday that they have then? Rosh Hashanah was not a biblical holiday. Does anybody know the big one they have then? It is Sukkot. What is that? The Feast of Tabernacles. What is that celebration all about? They're celebrating. God has the Jews. They still do today. They've been celebrating it all the way from the time of Moses all the way till today. They are celebrating the time when they were in tents leaving Israel. Remember, they had the tabernacle as God's house, God's tent. Tabernacle was just a portable temple before they built the temple. They're like, okay, this is where God lives. This is his house. We're going to pick his house up and then going to move and we pick up our house. And then tabernacle was a portable temple until the temple was going to be built later on with Solomon. Yes?
You said the time they were leaving Israel?
I'm sorry, Egypt. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah. If I say something that sounds really bizarre, let me know because I may have misspoke. Yeah, when they left Egypt, God, they build a tabernacle for him, and then they have their tents. Okay, so he's tabernacling with them. He is dwelling among them. He's in the neighborhood. There's his house. Okay, and so what they still do today is the Jews. And so a lot of Jews will say, I guess ever listen to Ben Shapiro?
Yeah.
Ben Shapiro. He's always I listen to him every day. I love the guy, but he's Jewish. He's Orthodox Jew, and he says that Sukkot is his favorite holiday. Because they all go out, and some people will just stay in the tent, but they all go out and they'll go eat in the tent, and they do everything in the tent. And he said it's just so much fun fellowshipping because the focus is on fellowship. So God has all of these holidays for the Jews because he wants them to fellowship. He wants them to think about him, but also each other. Okay? Now, if Jesus was born on Sukkot, which it looks like this is probably what happened, this is cool. Sukkot is the Feast of Tabernacles when God came down and said, I am tabernacling among you. I am living among you and with you. So I want to socialize with you. Join your neighborhood. And if you read John 1:14, if you go look up in the actual Greek there, when it says the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, go look up that word dwelt. Guess what it means, literally? Tabernacle. Isn't that cool? He came and tabernacled among us. Wouldn't it be cool if we actually celebrated Christmas then? Celebrating the tabernacling of God? We're in 4 BC. We got that messed up. We got this thing messed up. Anyway, pretty cool. A lot of Jews know this. I did not realize this, but a lot of Jews in Israel who are not even Christians are like, no, Jesus was born around Sukkot, not Hanukkah. Anyway, so Bethlehem might have been crowded. This is what Ray Vanderland said. Bethlehem may have been overly crowded, not just because Jesus because of the census, but because it was probably Sukkot, and all these people were going to Jerusalem to celebrate Sukkot, and there's just nowhere to stay. Okay, when they went to Jerusalem, that may have been why it's such a problem. This actually has explanatory power. It explains things. Okay, so he's going to be from Nazareth. Now, this is really cool. What do we know about the word Nazareth? We know our Hebrew, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. The word netzer means branch. What happened was, before the time of Christ, just within the century before Christ, a group of Jews from Bethlehem found, because there's a lot of work that you could find a lot of work up north for King Herod. Wouldn't like that Jesus actually worked for King Herod, by the way. We'll talk about that later on if we can get that far. So Nazareth is a small town that some Jews from Bethlehem are going to, they founded it, and they claim that they are related to David. You know, in Isaiah 11, when it says that, when he says, my servant, the branch, about the Messiah, the future Messiah, the branch, it's related to that word netzer, the branch. These guys were claiming to be related to David and part of that lineage that could possibly be the messianic lineage. And that's why when they founded Nazareth, that's what they were actually claiming. Isn't that cool? Netzer, okay? And so that's why Isaiah 11:1 says, a branch from Jesse's roots shall bear fruit. Okay, the Netzer. So they're kind of claiming that about themselves up there in Nazareth. So they're going to come travel.
And they were right, I guess.
Yeah, they were right. That's why if you read the Gospels, they trace Jesus' lineage. They knew they were in the line of David. Jesus' family knew that they were right in the line of David. So was Mary. Both of them were. Okay, and so the Bible says that in the days of Caesar Augustus, there was a census. So Caesar Augustus, Roman emperor, is going to conduct a census. There's his coin, and census. Now it mentions Quirinius, a governor of Syria, and Quirinius is going to be governor around this time from 11 BC to 4 BC in Syria. So the Bible is giving us all these dates of these emperors, of priests you're going to see, and of regional governors, because that's how they kept track of time back then. And so Luke is telling us, I want you to be able to pinpoint about when this guy is born. Okay, and about the month and everything. We can figure that out. And so it's during the first census that took place when Quirinius was governor, because another one will take place later on during Quirinius' governorship. So he's going to go from Nazareth up here. He's going to travel down here to Bethlehem, which is about a 90-mile trip or 80-mile trip. And they say that the whole travel there would have been part of the fun. Socializing with your friends along the way, the big caravans going to Jerusalem. It's supposed to be a fun time where you're all going in a big crowd. That's why, the story where Jesus, one time when they go down to the temple, Jesus was left behind. They assume that he joined the caravan. And you're wondering, like, how do you leave? Like, oh, where's my kid? Because if you picture just one family leaving like we go everywhere, where's Jesus? Oh, I forgot him. Home alone. Kevin. But that's not how it works. You're going to have a big caravan. They just assume he's with his friends, probably, realistically. And so the Bible, we know that the Romans conducted a census about every 14 years. Archaeologists, Bible critics used to say, Luke made up this thing about the census because they knew they had to get the Messiah born in Bethlehem, so they made this up to get Jesus into Bethlehem to fulfill the prophecy of Micah. Okay. Now we know that they really did have a Roman census, that these things are real. And we found 5 different papyri that actually mention a census. I'm going to show you my favorite one because it just clearly explains the same thing that Luke did. So we have in Egypt, this papyrus. This one dates to 104 AD. The reason why I'm showing you this, we have earlier ones. The reason why I'm showing you this one is because of what it says. So this is actually what it looks like in black and white here from the British Museum. And here's what it says. It says, seeing that the time has come for the house-to-house census, it is necessary to compel all those who for any cause whatsoever are residing out of their provinces to return to their homes for the census. Why did the Romans want everybody to return to where they originally had registered in the census before? It's way easier on the Romans to keep books that way. Because if you're like, okay, where's this Joseph guy? He's not here. He died. They know where he is. And so everybody has to return home to where you initially registered to make it easier on us Romans to count you. So we can tax you better and know how many of you guys are there of military age in case we need to put down a rebellion. Okay? And so that's why they had to return home. And we have, yes, this is actually what did happen. Sorry, critics, it is actually what happened. Okay, so the Romans conducted a census every 14 years. This means Jesus would have been part of the 8 BC census. When we first hear that, you think, hold on a second. When exactly is he born then? Okay, here's how it worked. For the census, it started in the Roman Empire, and each province, they started getting around to thinking, now this province, we're going to do this one later, and this one later. And so they start the thing in 8 BC. But it took many years, actually, to get to each province. Like, now we're going to go do this province, now we're going to do this province over here, for it to actually finally get to Israel. So by the time the census got to Israel, it was first initiated in 8 BC. It would have been around 4 BC or so. Okay, that's the one that was commanded at that time. King Herod dies around 4 BC. This is how we know Jesus had to have been born prior to that. We get that from the dates in Josephus, Jewish historian. In case you wonder where we get that from. Okay. All right. So Bethlehem, the Bible predicted in Micah, out of you a ruler over Israel, whose origins are from of old, from ancient times. Fulfill the prophecy. I gave away the answer. My clicker went too fast. You guys want to take a short 2-minute break? Maybe stand up and stretch?
No, we're used to it.
Sure? I'm used to teaching high school since yeah, go leave.
That's pretty good stuff, man. So that Luke thing, I can think that's just dumb because Luke was a smart guy. There's no way that he would choose census, make something up like census to get him home. He'd say something like his dad sent for him or something like that. He wouldn't make that up.
Yeah, because here we have a census that somebody's going to be fact checking you. Was it really a census then? Because that's what critics have been doing, though. It wasn't a census. Now we found several examples of documents mentioning the census. So okay, never
Yeah,
mind.
but to say he made it up, it's not smart. That's not.
So when did
Yeah.
the information about the every 14 years for a census? How did that?
That's only been in the last 20th century when we were able to pinpoint that because they kept finding that they were conducted every 14 years, and so it looks like that it's not a coincidence. It looks like it was actually every 14 years, and for us in the U.S. it's every what?
Did the Romans have like people that just went from one same people like conducted a census in each province?
Yeah,
and that's why it took a while.
You know, I'm not sure if it's the exact same people or if they just got it done. It could have been the same group, the census people. Could have been, but I do know that they did province by province. They didn't try to do it all at the same time. The reason why, because if you said, everybody right now, go back to, the whole Roman Empire, we're all going to move at the same time, it would have been just chaos. You could all go at the same time, so they did province by province. Had to happen.
So that supports the idea you said earlier about Bethlehem probably wasn't crowded because of the census. That was just kind of a trickling in kind of thing.
Probably because of Sukkot. Bethlehem is only a few miles away from Jerusalem. And so people who had relatives in Jerusalem, in Bethlehem, or anywhere in the area, probably went there. Now, when I get to Jesus being born, if you haven't heard what I'm about to say, it's going to really blow your mind. Like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm part of a different religion. It seems like it's like Christmas is like completely different from what we often hear. But hey, the truth is the truth. So I accidentally clicked ahead. Hopefully you didn't see it, or your short-term memory isn't very good. Maybe you've forgotten. According to early Christian history, in what kind of structure was Jesus born? I'm supposed to go to 8 o'clock tonight, right?
Yeah.
You guys can handle going all the way to 8 without a break?
Yep.
Can I film you saying that? Like I play it to my students.
That's good stuff.
You're like, no, but can I film you saying that too?
Eric never goes to surprise.
You're not at all boring.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. It's so nice to hear. When your audience is high school, so I've taught adults, high school kids. I've had middle school audiences. I can tell you this. I've taught college students. High school kids are the toughest, man. If you can make the high school kids laugh, they have a high standard for humor. Adults have like a lower standard, you know. So according to early Christian history, in what kind of structure was Jesus born?
Okay.
Cheaters. Correct.
I think Eric told us that.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Oh, it wasn't because you saw him on the slide? Both. Whatever. He's born in a cave. And here's how we know that. Justin Martyr, I named my son Caleb here, Caleb Justin, after Justin Martyr, one of the first Christian apologists. Justin Martyr tells us this, early church father. He says, but when the child, talking about Jesus, when he was born in Bethlehem, he was where? He was born where? In a certain cave near the village. And while they were there, Mary brought forth the Christ and placed him in a manger. Manger, of course, is a fancy word that means feeding trough. I wish we said trough, because manger sounds like manger. It sounds so elegant instead of it's a feeding trough, which is you're supposed to be taken back by that, the humility of God being in a trough. Any question?
Yeah. Now these are Justin's words,
Yes.
but I had heard before that some of the Greek words that are used in the New Testament describe the lower level of a family dwelling.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that.
You're gonna get.
Yeah, I'm gonna make that connection in a second.
Okay.
And then also we have Origen, church father, also says that they're shown at Bethlehem the cave where he was born, and the manger in the cave where he was wrapped. So this is considered accepted knowledge by early Christians. He's born in a cave. And Eusebius also says he was born in a what? In a cave. So all the early church fathers are pinpointing him as being in a cave. And I'll tell you why there's a cave in a second. So also Jerome, early Christian historian, tells us this. From the time of Hadrian was a Roman emperor who was ruling between 117 and 138 AD. From the time of Emperor Hadrian, Hadrian set up a grove of trees, planted some trees and plants perhaps there to celebrate the god Adonis, who was Tiamat in the Canaanite region, in the vicinity of the cave where Jesus was. In fact, Hadrian did this to desecrate the holy places of the Christian faith. He also set up a statue of Zeus somewhere. Does anybody know where? Hadrian set up a statue of Zeus on the tomb where Jesus was laid. And he did that to show Rome has conquered your false god. And so I'm going to go plant this grove for the Roman god Adonis, which is their version of Tamaz, to show that we have conquered your god, where he was born and his tomb. But what did he? Why are we glad that he did that? Yeah, he marked it for us. He preserved it for us. And so Constantine comes along in the 300s AD, 313 AD, he became a Christian. And then he goes in there and he knocks all this stuff down, destroyed the statue of Zeus, and he set up a church in these places. Isn't that cool? But so Hadrian marked them for us, that these are actually the sites where these events took place. Okay, so Jesus was placed in a manger because there was no room for him in the. Oh, what?
I did a presentation on this
Yes.
after you inspired me.
That's right.
I did to this class last year.
Very good. Excellent. Katalima. Or not in. Oh, yeah, another bad translation here. Because there's no room in the guest room. What? That's not what my Bible says. The English translation doesn't. But if you look in the Greek, it does not say in. In the Gospel of Luke, it says, she gave birth, laid him in a manger because there's no room for them in the katalima. Says in this translation, but it's the Greek word katalima. Well, we know what a katalima is. It is not an inn. It's not a hotel, motel, or whatever. Not a place to stay. It is actually a guest room. Okay? So we say inn, but it shouldn't be inn. Katalima means guest room, lodging room, or can even mean dining room. Okay? Now, let me show you an example. You guys know in Luke 22, when Jesus says, where is the guest room? And then they go to the upper room. That's the word katalima. When Jesus has the Last Supper, it says in Luke, say to the owner of the house, the teacher says to you, where is the katalima in which I may eat the Passover with my disciples? This is where the Lord's Supper was, the last one. Okay? The last Passover we celebrated. And he will show you the upper room. He goes to the katalima. He doesn't go to an inn. So why do we do that? Because in the word inn, that does mean inn, is also in Luke. You know the story of the Good Samaritan? When he takes the man in the story, and he does take him to an inn. Different word, isn't it? I forget how to say it. Panduchion, I think it is, something like that. That's the word for inn. Why do we do that? It's not a good translation. It's actually katami, which means the guest room. There's no room in the guest room, so he has to be born where the animals are. Okay? Why was there no room in the guest room? Yeah, because Uncle Bill got there first, and he's there with all the kids. Like, but Mary's pregnant. I'm sorry, Uncle. You know Uncle Bill is. His wife is gonna go crazy. I have all these kids here. She doesn't even have a kid. Probably some kind of bickering going on there. Like, it's okay. It's okay. We'll just go have the Son of God born down here where the animals are, and then put him in the feeding trough. I'm gonna tell everybody in heaven there's no room in the Talmud because you guys are so picky. So there's no room in the guest room, which would more than likely have been their family's house. Because remember, those who moved to Netzer had family roots where? In Bethlehem. See how it's all painting a picture like, oh, this is starting to make sense, right? This is one way. I'm going to show you different examples of artists trying to figure out what their houses look like back then. The archaeologists have found a lot of the bases of these houses. Perhaps something like this, where you have and here's another example here, where the roof here has been cut away just to kind of see in there. There would have been a room there, and that's going to be the upper room, the katalima. is going to be right there. It's going to be the upstairs. When Jesus goes to have the Last Supper, he's going to, this structure is found over and over and over and over and over again in Israel at that time. It was the main structure in first century Israel that the Jews used. They used, it's kind of like you go look at these neighborhoods nowadays. It's like the exact same thing. You can choose between this guy and this guy. It's like, well, okay. You have to have that same kind because that's what the construction companies are building. Okay? And so down here, what's going to be done there?
Animals.
That's where they keep the animals. Now, the Jews actually had a similar structure to this, even in the Old Testament period. You guys know the story of Jephthah? When he says, God, if you give me victory, I'm going to kill, I'm going to sacrifice to you whatever comes out of my house first. And who came out? His daughter. So he kills her. Okay? Which, by the way, he wasn't supposed to do that. In case you're like, wow, that's the Bible saying you got to be really dedicated. That's the Bible saying this guy's a moron. This never should have been at all on his radar. Okay. The reason why he said that was because what was he thinking is going to come out? Because animals and humans are all going to come out that same door. It's like a little courtyard area that you walk the animals out. That's what he was thinking. But if you read Josephus' commentary on it, he says that Jephthah was in error because he did not know the law of Moses. That you're not supposed to ever sacrifice a human. Deuteronomy 18 tells us that. So the fact that he did that shows that he should have been like, okay, daughter, I'm glad you're greeting me. Now we're going to sit here and wait for an animal to come out and sacrifice. And so he's like, I got to sacrifice you now. Well, like Abraham. Abraham never did it, remember? Anyway, so animals would have been down here. Now, here's what we also know that the ancient Israelites used to do is they often would take and build their houses up against a cave. And so, because it's like a whole extra room, you just build your house up against it. This is extremely common. Archaeologists will find this. Now, caves are everywhere in Israel. They're all over the place. If you ever go to Israel, if you've been to Israel, you see caves just all over the place. It's not something we see that commonly here, but in Israel, there's just caves all over the place. And so what they would often do is build their houses up against these caves, and then that's where they would keep the animals inside. More than likely, this is probably what's going on. There's just one of those many houses that's built up against a cave. Or we do also find sometimes it's right next to the cave. It'll be like that. That's also another possibility. Sometimes they'll find these structures of a house built right next to the cave. Find copper lights, which is a fancy word that means petrified poop of animals from there. These Jesus' lifetime and such. So away in a manger, but not in a barn. There could have been different ideas of the house structure. So there's the katalma upstairs.
Any idea why they would have chosen to go out to the cave instead of just staying down there with animals?
Well, the cave is where the animals are. Because that's why there's a trough there. The manger is in there because it's a feeding trough for animals. So they go right in there to either the animals are let out or if it's in September. That's also why the Bible says that the shepherds are doing what outside? Watching their flock by night, because they would sleep outside sometimes with their flock. And it could have been that a lot of them were outside because the animal rooms were probably filled because of Sukkot, so many families coming in. That probably explains that. As far as at night, which would not have been December because it's cold. They always stay inside in December.
So it wouldn't have even necessarily been uncommon in a time like this for other guests to have stayed where the animals would have been.
Exactly.
Anyway.
Yes, exactly. That's
so it's not that they were necessarily shoved over necessarily into where the animals were, but that just happened to be, that's where they ended up because there was already people up in the guest room.
But you would think the Son of God would be born in a palace.
You would think.
Which you're exactly right. Yeah, and I think God's communicating something cool to us that I'm going to talk about in a second. But yeah, it's fulfilling prophecy too. This is a sheep cave in Israel. This is Ray Vanderland over here is our guide that I've been talking about. We're in a real sheep cave still today. They still practice. This is in the Bethlehem region. This is a little bit outside of Bethlehem. They still practice today keeping animals in these caves. This is an actual sheep cave, He leads us in here, and then he goes, and I videotaped this. He says, all right, I want everybody to look down on the ground. What do you see?
Copper lights.
Yeah, worse. I'm going to zoom in here.
Petrified, you know what?
It ain't petrified. That's fresh.
Oh, that's fresh.
Yeah, little blueberries? No. Little sheep pellets everywhere. Still today.
Did it smell in there?
It did. It did. Smelled like the county fair. But the shepherd had taken him out. He was leading the sheep out while we were there. And so they still do that today. For thousands of years they've been doing that. And so one thing he said to us was, I want you to look around and I want you to smell. And I want you to realize the Son of God was born in something like this. Why? What is his message? Yes. That he's saying, I'm coming to tabernacle with you, and I'm going to experience all of the garbage and the manure that you experienced. So he comes down and tabernacles in our midst in the manure of our lives. That's what he's communicating. Isn't that interesting? And so one thing Ray Vanderland said was, the more majestic we try to make Christmas, sometimes we miss the point. The majestic part should be our majestic Lord tabernacling and going through all of the dung that we go through. Isn't that interesting? Man, that's fascinating. That's what we're supposed to get out of it. Yes.
Similar thought there. The marking of the exact cave that it was and the exact tomb where he died, I think was also God's way of saying that exact location is not what's important, because he didn't want us to make those into shrines and
Which they did. No shame to say it.
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly. But they ended up doing that anyway.
I think they messed it up by doing that.
We missed the communication.
I think it's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
I think Constantine's heart was good.
Yeah.
A lot of people's heart is good, but I think they're missing God's heart on this. As he wants you to think, my life is miserable, and he's like, I'm going to go be miserable too. He doesn't just tell us, go suffer through life and you just toughen up, get through it. He decided, I'm going to do it too. I'm going to go and I'm going to get through it. And I am going to try to toughen up and be a good role model for you guys. But he doesn't just say, you suffer and get through it. He says, I'm going to do it too. So it's almost like he's saying, if I'm going to tell you that you need to suffer, what kind of God would I be if I don't go do it too? Isn't that fascinating? Because that's our Lord that we have. Anyway, so here's one of my friends that's there. This is the cave from the outside. And I was able to get a picture here of some cows. This is a different cave that we went to, actually. I'm going to zoom in here. I'm just zooming in this actual picture. These are cows still being kept there. So today. Isn't that cool? So here's a stone manger.
She did her presentation for our class.
He inspired me. This is where I got it from.
Oh.
Did you copy my PowerPoint?
No.
Sheila?
No, I didn't.
I am.
Good, I'm flattered.
I was just fascinated because I had never heard that before until last year. It was
You
amazing.
can copy everything. That's fine. Good, I'm glad. I'm copying other people. It's all my material.
You did the actual digs on this
Oh,
one?
my dreaded digs and yeah. But the Jews did not work with wood very much because a lot of the areas in Israel, the trees were just so wimpy and small. They didn't have a lot of good wood to work with, so they worked with stone. Okay, there's a bunch of mangers found throughout Israel, but they're stone. What they use. We picture little wooden barns because we Europeanize it, don't we? Instead of looking at how it would have been in Israel. So this is a modern day manger or feeding trough, and I'm gonna I took a picture of this one, then I took a picture over here. There's a well right here, right beside it. You can tell that it's on the other side there. They had these wells today, a little small well, they would actually, this is outside manger, they would, put, get water out and such. And a lot of their wells are actually like these cisterns underground where you kind of like go into a cave. But every now and then they have these small ones here. And so it's believed that Joseph would have been put perhaps in one of these small ones. Poor Joseph when he was stuck inside that thing. So here's it's actually a different one here where the a well, modern day shepherds actually use this. This one hadn't been used in a while, it looks like. Okay. And so the Bible mentions shepherds being nearby. One thing I also learned in Israel is that at the time of Christ, and it's still today in a lot of the world, shepherds, how old are shepherds usually? Yeah, they're usually 9, 10, 11, 12. They're usually kids. Another thing I learned was they're boys and girls. I always picture like an old man. You know, shepherd. I always picture that. He's like, stop picturing that. Most shepherds, in fact, if you read Genesis and you read Rachel, who becomes Jacob's wife, he calls her a shepherdess. You ever notice that? I didn't even notice it until I went to Israel and he pointed that out. That they always pictured males. It was boys and girls. And so when the shepherds came to see Jesus, who came?
Middle schoolers.
Yeah, like my son or like my kids. Little boys and girls. Isn't that fascinating? Oh, by the way, the disciples, how old were they? Yep, they would have been around high school age.
That accounts for some of Peter's.
Yeah, you read the things it says. Like, I sound like a teenager. Teenager. Because some of the words that Jesus uses for them, when he calls them how's it worded in King James? Like it uses lad or something like that. But the Greek word means what would be a developing teenager. Isn't that interesting? And that's the age that most disciples were. It was teenagers. And Jesus, by the way, quick little side note, Jesus broke tradition when he selected his disciples. What I didn't know until I went to Israel, Randall was telling us, is that the tradition was, we know this from the ancient rabbinical writings, is you have the disciples come to you, and they say, I want you to be my rabbi. And the rabbi goes and prays and then go give an affirmative yes or no. Jesus did something that no rabbi at the time was doing. What did he do? He picked his disciples and said, I want you to come follow me. And another thing that he pointed out to us was everybody in Israel, everybody wanted to be the student of a rabbi. But only like the top, 5% got to be a student of a rabbi. And so the fact that Jesus picked those guys meant that they had already, more than likely, applied to become somebody else's disciple and didn't make the cut. Those guys missed out. Right? Anyway, so shepherds, and here's a video I took of some shepherds while I was there. Another thing that I learned was that I just always picture the shepherds just standing there all the time. Not how it works. They're always moving because you don't want the sheep to just stand there because they'll just eat the grass, the roots, everything, just destroy it. You only want them to eat the top part so they'll keep growing back. So you have to keep them moving all the time. Okay? And these are the green pastures. This is in the Bethlehem region. When the Bible talks about the Lord leads us in green pastures and such, that's what you're looking at. Is in the ancient world, it was like this as well. That's why you had to be led to it. It's not like these rolling hills of grass. You got to get a one tuft of grass a day. And that's how our God leads us, is one tuft at a time. One tuft at a time. This guy's on his cell phone over here. Watch this. But they're constantly in motion. And the shepherds, the sheep will just follow the shepherd. One thing is different from a sheep and a goat is they say every shepherd in Israel has a story of accidentally calling a sheep and the sheep will just come obediently, and he'll hurt himself. They say that you can have a sheep that'll be like on a cliff that you're like, come on, man, and you realize, how did he get up there? He just accidentally went the wrong way or something. And you tell them to come. The sheep are so obedient. They trust their shepherd so much that they'll just, you told me I could come. They'll just fall, even right to their death, or break limbs. Just direct obedience to the shepherd. It's sad. They say the goats, though, you'd be like, come over here, and they're like, nope. Let's just keep on going. And so that's why, yeah, like I'm not a shepherd around the sheep and so forth. I didn't know that. And so when God calls us to be his sheep, what does that mean?
Followers.
We trust him, we're going to follow him. Well, he said I can come, so I'm going to go. And trust it. I'm not going to fall to my death if you have a good shepherd. Okay, and we do.
I grew up with sheep, and they're really anxious, which I think is interesting. They're like skittish and kind of anxious, and they're so stupid.
But it's the ghosts that pass out if you scare them, right?
Some of them are
Is that the sheep? I mean, the goat?
Yeah.
You guys see this video?
Yeah.
Where people are like, ah! And the goats they get so scared they can't move. They like that their brains are shut off. Okay, so here's interesting. 3 miles away from Jesus' birth, just 3 miles away, was the palace of the world's richest man at the time. One of his palaces, the Herodian. Okay, King Herod, other than the Roman emperor, as far as someone who was a businessman, he actually had more money than anybody in the world from his business dealings. He was so rich from selling what was supposed to be a natural aphrodisiac. People back then were buying that kind of stuff too. And it didn't, they say, more likely it didn't even work, but he made so much money promoting it and selling it. That's how he became so wealthy. And after he became wealthy, he started then other small businesses and such. But it's estimated that about 60% of the population of Israel were employed by King Herod. He was the king, but also businessman, and so people were employed to work for him to build things. One person, Jesus of Nazareth, unemployed stonemason, which we'll get to in a second. We mean by carpenter, tecton, working for Herod. But right here, the Herodian was this huge palace back in the day. It's what it looks like today. I can't see it that well. The Herodian inside, massive palace. I think what it looks like that. Okay. Now, I'm actually at the Herodium taking this video, and Ray Van Loan was telling us just 3 miles exactly in that direction there is Bethlehem. And so what do you think God is doing by having Jesus born right there near this palace of the world's richest man? He's contrasting it, isn't he? In fact, Matthew tells us that the Magi are going to visit. We're going to get that story in a second. We're going to visit Herod first. Surely the Messiah is born in a palace, right? Not where there's manure everywhere. And so from Bethlehem to the Herodium is just 3 miles away. Okay? And so God is contrasting this. Here we have the king, rich, King of Kings. That's contrast. We're supposed to get out of this. Okay. Here's a real guy. Nobody disputes that. We got Herodian coins. This is the Church of the Nativity. Maybe we'll turn the lights off for a little bit. You guys handle 15 minutes with the lights off, right? Am I getting tired now? You want a break now? Let's see who makes it at the end. Lights on. Okay, so Constantine built this church around 327 AD. He became a Christian around 313. He built this. It's been rebuilt over the centuries, but he builds this on top of the cave area where Jesus would have been. And so this is very old. They actually put this little small door here. It's not the main door, but it's one of those side doors. It kind of preserves a little cave-like feel. Isn't that cool? go to the little church there. Now, here's the layout inside of the church. And Jesus will be born in this area here, according to early church history. And so, moving along here, and here we go into the birth cave. See that little thing looks like a chimney? So Santa Claus came down to visit Jesus. Came down to visit Jesus, born on December 25th, and Santa Claus came and gave him some presents. We're going to zoom in there. This hole beneath there is because it's built actually on top of the cave. It's supposed to be beneath there is where the cave actually is. Of course, they put the little incense there and everything to try to make it look nice. Magi. Who are these guys? Yes, astronomers. The magi. The Greek word magi. It actually is. Does anybody know where they're from?
The East.
Persia.
Yes, very good. They're Persian. How many were there?
19.
You read this before. How many were there, Caleb? Yeah, we don't know how many. There've been a lot. Why do we always say 3?
3 gifts.
Yeah, because over the years, the paintings, or they'll have the 3 gifts represented. So you have to draw a minimum of 3 if you're going to draw 3 gifts being represented. Like each one with a gift, and so people just start thinking there's only 3. Okay, so there were probably way more than 3. Okay, now they are going to be from Persia more than likely. I'll explain why in a second. So here's my little animation I made for you. Here's Persia, and here they come. There you go. It's impressive, right?
Awesome.
Yeah. Can you believe you guys don't have to charge for this? It's just free. Okay. Magi. These are Zoroastrian priests. Zoroastrians were monotheists from Persia. Astronomers from Persia. Daniel interacted with these guys 500 years earlier. Right? Now, Clement of Alexandria, early church father, says the Magi of the what? Persians. It was known that they were Persians. Now, here's an early drawing around in the 200s AD, the earliest one that we have, in the catacombs of Rome. You know what the catacombs are, right? Where the Christians would bury their dead underground in Rome. But the way they're dressed, these little hats and everything they got on, these are Persian hats. Okay, this is 300s AD in the Vatican, on a sarcophagus. These are the wise men, or the Magi. What Magi means is where we get the word magic, magician. Okay, it used to mean somebody who does magic. They're wise, right? It's supposed to be what they believe. But this is you see the little hats there, little Persian style hats. Looks like little elves, don't they? Working for Santa. Here we come. Building.
Bringing gifts.
Bring gifts to little children. See that? Baby Jesus. Elves. Here they are. 565. Still looking Persian. See how they're still looking Persian? The Persian outfits. Uh-oh. They've upgraded. Around 900 AD, we start seeing this bubble. Oh, now they're kings. They're kings? What are we doing to Christmas again? Yeah, westernizing, and they're kings and everything, and now today, now they're different races. Look at that. Now they're 3 different races. By the time we get to the early Middle Ages, suddenly they're kings and they're different races. They're all over the place. And they even got names. They actually named the guys. It's these 3 names where they're from. It's like, stop making stuff up now. All right. King Herod the Great is going to start killing off the children. By the way, it's estimated, how many little kids do you think he probably had killed in Bethlehem, in that region there? They estimate around 10.
Oh.
That's it. It's like, what? Because Bethlehem, the population is, at the time of Jesus, is going to be less than 300. Not a big place. It's like a little neighborhood. Small place. And so archaeologists estimate that it would only be a little small blip on the radar. Interesting, huh? Anyway, so King Herod, when you guys know the story, that the wise men visit Herod and say, where's this king that's going to be born? And he's like, what are you talking about? I don't want anybody to think there's another king here, so I'm going to make sure I kill him off. And it says he kills off all the boys, how old? 2 and under. Because that's, the Magi told him that that's about how long ago they had seen the star. Okay? Now, Jesus' early life. So then he's going to go and leave. You guys know the story, right? Now, how are Joseph and Mary going to afford to go to Egypt? Because if you know the story, they leave because the Magi said, they get the warning, the dream, and everything that the King Herod's going to come kill them. They're going to come attack. You guys getting sleepy? A little bit. Turn your lights back on. And so they left. So how could they afford to then go to Egypt afterwards?
The gold from the guy?
Yeah. They just got some gift. They got some gold. So God was actually ordaining everything to sustain them. Frankincense, some myrrh, and embalm some things in Egypt. They're gonna like myrrh. Yeah, we embalm everything over here. And so which have you heard the connection with the gold, meaning he's king, frankincense, priest, myrrh, yes, embalming the death of Jesus. Okay, so then he's going to return to Nazareth from Egypt when after they hear that King Herod dies, and so he goes up here to live in Nazareth again, where it's good work up there in Nazareth, in Galilee County. There's Nazareth. Nazareth is there's modern day Nazareth, it's a real place. What it looks like today. Okay, he's a carpenter. What does that mean? Huh?
I said, I get some disillusion, I'm afraid for you to tell me.
I'm a different religion.
Okay.
I'm done.
He built stuff out of stone?
And the Magi came when he was older and all that. Not when he was born. So Jesus is a carpenter. The Greek word carpenter is the word tekton. What does it mean? It's a stonemason. Okay, the people living in Nazareth, we actually know what pretty much more than likely all the men did. They're all stonemasons. There's a reconstructed house in Nazareth. People always think it's big, but those are small trees. Okay, this is not a big house, but well, his house is big. This is a reconstruction of what a house probably looked like in Nazareth, based on the what has been found in Nazareth. It's not very big, so you can see this. And I can see there in proportion to its door. So if you go inside it, there's the courtyard, the animals there, the upper room, how do you say that in Greek? Katalama, very good. Would have looked something like that, and there'd been another room over there. So Jesus would have grown up in a house that would have looked a lot like this. And he would have learned how to build these houses for a living. And so these are the carpenter techniques from back in the day. We have, they're going to put these wooden timbers across. So they did use some wood, but mainly stone. And then this cane matting, and then they're going to plaster over it.
So
This guy's smoking over here.
when Jesus healed the man that was let down through the roof, it would have been a roof like this. They would have really had to work it. I mean,
Yes.
apart
In fact, they would have smashed through. They would have broken through. In fact, the words used in the scripture indicate that they're breaking through the top. And by the way, we think we know whose house it was. Whose house was it? In Capernaum. Where were they staying? Peter's house. Remember, he was staying with his mother-in-law was in the house, because Jesus goes in there, Peter's house in Capernaum, heals her of the fever. And so when all it says is they returned to the house in Capernaum. It's actually what it says, in the house. Well, whose house were they always going to? Peter's. More than likely, they're smashing through Peter's roof. He's like, wait, we want to see Jesus, and then smashed into the house. His mother-in-law was like, why did y'all do? I ain't come smashing through my roof. You guys come in, I let all your friends to come stay. Smashed my roof. Maybe it wasn't like that. Maybe like, oh yeah, sure, just fix it back. But it would have looked something like this. Jesus would have known how to do this. Okay. Now, this is me up here at the top, and some of the guys that were with us in Israel. And this is a limestone rock quarry right outside of Nazareth. This is the quarry that Jesus and Joseph and Jesus' brothers would have actually chiseled away to get bricks. And I'll tell you what they did with the bricks in a second. So then Ray Van Land tells us this is where they would have made the stones. So you can see that they actually still have the perfect edges where they've been. And they chisel down in there, and then they take these pieces of wood and they hammer them in there, and they pour water on the wood thickens and breaks it, clean break. So this is Nazareth, the rock quarry that Jesus would have been quarrying. Here's what they would do: they would take these big stones, and they would put them inside these giant wooden wheels, and they wheel those things around. So I want you to picture Jesus working with this kind of stuff, and not picture the little scrawny little, AIDS victim Jesus walking around. Picture him like he's so weak, always about to cry or something like that. I want you to picture a guy who's working with this stuff. Okay, physically would have been a pretty powerful guy. Okay, so rolling this thing around. Now, there I am next to one of those bricks. To kind of give you an idea of how big the thing is. So Jesus lives in Nazareth, and we're almost, I can't say certain, it's extremely probable that he would have worked in the city of Sepphoris. The population of Nazareth was only about 400, and the population of Sepphoris was 30,000. And they needed people, stonemasons, to come build the city of Sepphoris. It's a Hellenized city, it's a Roman city, but Hellenistic culture. And so Jesus would have more than likely been working there. That everybody in Nazareth would have been working for Herod, his construction company, going and building there. It's only a 4-mile walk, which back then that's nothing. Okay, to us, like 4 miles, I don't want 4 miles. Okay. And so this more than likely is the city that Jesus actually built. These are the ruins of 1st century Sepphoris. More than likely, Jesus actually built part of the city growing up as a kid and as a young man. That's interesting. So he may have actually paved this road here, and he definitely would have walked this road. Isn't that cool? Here's Sepphoris that Jesus would have built.
No, Sepphoris, the town still.
Oh no, not anymore. No, this is it today. No, so let's see. Outside of it,
outlived that.
Oh yeah. There's an earthquake that came and hit this place. Yeah, knocked down some of the pillars. So Jesus may have actually stood against this pillar from the time of Christ. Jesus may have actually gone and stood against that pillar. Thought about you, thinking about him, standing against the pillar.